Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the updates. As it happened, setting up the new house, the Radio Shack was one of the last rooms to be set up. Nonetheless, here we go. We've got good news on the horizon today. There's a hostage release that was announced very early this morning. Um, the the enemy is the enemy. We have to stop calling them the enemy now. We're obviously doing business with them and likely will be doing business with them for the long term. Nonetheless, the fantasy of removing them seems to have fallen off the table. Although one of the things I want to make you aware of, when you hear the death tolls, that does not include the fighters. The IDF claims that most of the casualties, at least after the initial, before people started to move out, now virtually all of the casualties the IDF claims are fighters, which the statistics don't release. They just say thousands and thousands of killed. The IDF has killed thousands and thousands, but mostly, almost entirely soldiers. Anyway, that being said, we're going to release, I don't know, somewhere between 30, 50 hostages, and then 10 each day for the next, God knows, we're going to have a 5-day ceasefire. There's tons of humanitarian, food, clothing, shelter being trucked in during those 5 days. And in an absolute miracle of combat finesse, 28 of those preemie kids, the IDF brought in incubators, got them out. Those kids are either in Cairo or in the hospital in Rafah or at the field hospital outside of Rafah. That is an amazing feat. But what we have to face is, we're not going to, the idea that we're going to completely destroy and wipe off the face of the earth, the Hamas, that's out. That was probably never likely, but it's certainly clearly not likely. Now, most of them the leadership anyway has escaped the Shifa Hospital headquarters hasn't, according to any news that I've read, really revealed anything. Now, that just may mean that the trove is so rich and so valuable, and so they're keeping their mouths shut and interrogating these people for as long as they can before their whereabouts become known. Also possible. Nonetheless, the situation in Gaza is just, improving. What an absurd thing to say, like they're on vacation and the weather picked up, they can go parasailing now. No, I don't, again, I don't mean to sound so absurd. But Kerem Shalom, the Israeli crossing, is, where is that on the map? It's hard to get oriented sometimes. Yes, Kerem Shalom is right around here somewhere. Yeah, there it is, Kerem Shalom. That's going to be taking in a lot more freight. They're going to be allowing a lot more goods in. Remember, what the problem is this stuff has to be inspected for armaments. So that would be a classic ruse that the humanitarian aid contains ammo. That's not been unheard of. So things are improving in terms of getting food and shelter and clothing and medical treatment to the people on the move here. I don't really know. None of us really know how things are progressing in the tunnel war. But just one thing I want to point out. I may have talked about this at an earlier stage. As I mentioned several times, my engineering knowledge is quite ancient now. So one of the things I'm learning, when you destroy an entrance to a tunnel or several entrances to a tunnel in a particularly dense area of the network, the ground collapses, and therefore all of the buildings above them collapse. So when they hit a node, which is we now know and have known for many years that these nodes are under schools, under mosques, under hospitals, under clinics, vast areas surrounding them collapse. Now, I might have thought that was due to explosive storage on site. No, it may have been, but not that kind of damage. The quantity of explosive would be enormous. It's from the ground collapsing underneath. So that's why you see those massive, massive craters following tunnel destruction. with respect to developments on the north, there's still enough back and forth activity to justify, escalation should the time when should I don't know how to, obviously, this isn't really headquarters. I just think it is, but in order to, really engage fully with Nasrallah and his enormous arsenal, which many people feel if you're going to do it, let's do it. If we can get rid of the second proxy, and just in terms of the fleet, it's getting so there's so much listed, there's so much firepower listed on the map that they're going to have to reduce the font size. We still have the Ford group, the Eisenhower group, a lot of the although there was just recently a seizure of a ship off of Yemen, and a freighter. Somehow, so they're targeting Israeli shipping, although it's registered in Malta, but they're targeting shipping. So because some of that force, that pirate force, which is I don't know what this for, Patriot, I never know what those things are. But this is a force, an international force that interdicts pirates along the Gulf of Aden. And so those have been moved on into the Persian Gulf, into the Strait of Hormuz, or somewhere in there. You can't these locations are approximate. So there's plenty. The U.S. is being patient. Those ships are staying in Sito. Should the engagement with the North ever play out? So that's great news that the hostages are going to start to be relieved. They're going to keep the soldiers, of course, but they're letting out the women and children, the babies at least. And we're going to exchange some of our women and children prisoners also in the deal. But I think, I think we have to start getting our heads around as Jews, as people who are, severely injured, wounded in that last round, is that in order for this end game to play out, we're going to have to get into bed with these people. We're in bed plenty with the Germans. They've been reformed. I've owned Toyota cars. My stove says Bosch on it, for Christ's sake. We're going to have to face the music that if we want peace, we're going to have to dance with the enemy. And that is as unpalatable and distasteful as that may seem at this raw juncture in history. I'm afraid that's going to have to be part of the settlement arrangement. But in the meanwhile, we've got our work still cut out for us. Southern Lebanon is a death trap, and it could go off. And we still don't know what's going on. Oh no, we do. Let me just digress for a moment. I realize this is running a little long, but I feel like we need to get. And we haven't even looked at the markets, which are interesting themselves. But let's just finish the roundup. There's a huge diplomatic. Getting ahead of myself. First, let me say, don't pay attention to what any of the governments in this map say. Okay, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, anybody, particularly those people, they just don't, and the Turks for sure, just don't pay any attention to what they say. They have their own audiences. This is one of the most complicated and sophisticated and potentially, pregnant with success diplomatic efforts that I've ever seen, and any of us have really ever seen in our lifetimes, unless you're a old World War II veteran. But this is, in terms of diplomacy, this is a very, very fortuitous and febrile time. And so the first thing is just don't pay so much attention to what these people say and demanding for ceasefires. Don't worry about that. There is an effort now to put together, the players who are going to take over the control of Gaza once the Israelis leave, and who are going to be able to work with the Israelis, because the Israelis aren't going to. They may have the tanks leave, but they're going to have intelligence people there for a while, and so whatever team they put together are going to be maybe happy or not so happy, but nobody really cares. They're going to be working with Israeli intelligence for the foreseeable future. So that's with respect to listening to what they say. you'll notice that the Qataris are. Where's little Qatar? This Qatar are feverishly working behind this, not even behind the scenes anymore. They're the interlocutors between Hamas and the Israelis for in the hostage release. They are really coming over. They were supporters of the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They're not on board, but they're clearly now on board. They're on, and so that's another example of how quickly things and radically things are changing in favor of an overall positive movement, towards a settlement of the Palestinian issue. So that's still in play. We don't really know where the Persians are. They're holding. They're not doing anything that is overtly, problem causing. So far so good on that front, and so far so good on the northern front. It's still light fire being exchanged. That's going to do it for today. Oh, let's just have one quick look at the markets before we go. Oil is actually down 9.4% since the breakout of the war, thanks to all sorts of things, but mostly Saudi willingness to pull its weight. Gold is still up in the fear neighborhood. It's still up 8% since the outbreak of the war. It's still, doodling around 2,000. So that's still elevated concern levels, but not what I would call panic levels. 2,000, it's been fooling around. Just Lockheed Martin, just so you should know they're doing all right. Here's the property market is really fighting back. The gap is still, I didn't measure it. The gap is still, let's measure it. The gap between the war and now, it's only down 3.2%. And so the all share probably is, all share is much more. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is down 7%, but as you know, it dipped down to 15 at one point. And finally, the Israeli shekel is now 4.3% stronger than it was when the war broke out. Remember, this is an inverse scale. It now takes less shekel to buy $1. So as this falls, it means the shekel is getting stronger. So that's going to do it for now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to be able. I know that I'm going to be able to do this on a more regular basis. So stay strong, stay informed, and stay in touch. Bye-bye, everybody. If you'd like to share this update with friends or others, please feel free to distribute it as widely as you like, subscribe, like, whatever you'd like to do, and send their email addresses to sethbriefs@gmail.com. Sethbriefs, just like it says right there on the screen, @gmail.com, and I'll add them to the distribution list.